My name's John Russo. I'm the founder of B2B Fusion. I founded the business 7 years ago as a sales and marketing performance firm. The analogy I use is one of a gym membership, actually, where a lot of these companies buy software like Salesforce.com and their marketing automation system. And just like a gym membership, buying that software doesn't get you in revenue shape. We're the certified personal trainers that'll accelerate your progress in those systems to go quicker, to get the results that are measurable. And typically that's what a CMO or a head of marketing really wants, is measurable results. That's what we deliver on. It's almost like a hybrid of both strategy and system level execution. So it's a very unique blend. Usually you find companies that either focus on one end of the spectrum, strategy only, disconnected from the systems, or systems only. We're kind of right in that hash of both of those. Well, we typically do a bunch of different engagements for our clients in financial services, healthcare, high technology. Usually there's no one silver bullet in any one of those. If there was a silver bullet, we wouldn't be talking today. Typically it's spreading your bets and placing them very wisely depending on what your buyer and the buyer cycle is, who you're going after, and what that committee looks like. So there are tactics that we're finding that are effective, tactics that include video, tactics that include direct mail, if you can believe, but unless they're integrated and synthesized with how your buyer buys, they're really meaningless. So really understanding that buyer's journey to start with, and then kind of working your way back, is what we find with our clients the most successful in layering in the right tactics to get to them. I've been a CMO for Chief Marketing Officer for 10 years prior to doing this in both public and private companies. One of those companies focused on the email deliverability platform. So I watched the email trends very carefully, and what I've noticed is exactly what you just said, is it's way oversaturated. And consequently, the open rates are going down. It's getting more and more challenging to get even into the inbox. Some dynamics that are happening behind the scenes with Outlook 365, for example, make it very challenging for marketers to reach their intended audience. So consequently, they have to do creative things, whether it be going offline that we talked about earlier through direct mail, or through targeting off their site. So retargeting ads, for example, that when that person leaves that site, that it kind of follows their trail as they go to other sites. Those types of things definitely we see in conjunction with email. I haven't seen anybody abandon email, but I definitely have not seen the success that maybe 10 years ago that we saw within email. We're students of the game. Our team averages 15 plus years of business experience per member, but as you mentioned, LinkedIn is another great destination, which we do spend a lot of time trying to optimize and bring into our tactics to reach that buyer. And like you said, we've seen pretty dramatic changes in LinkedIn. Probably over the last year, I've done a lot of experimentation on my own with video, for example, on LinkedIn. A year ago, I was able to propagate cell phone video very aggressively and would get a large, broad audience, even with no likes and no engagement. About August, September, that dropped off precipitously. They changed their algorithm. But more recently, as I've been testing, as I've been getting that engagement, I'm finding about 10 to 20% of my LinkedIn network actually sees my video. And when it's actually engaged, then it propagates across. So whether we're using it for my company or recommending it to other companies, we've definitely seen LinkedIn as a destination, but really trying to watch and learn what's happening there becomes super important for our prospects and our customers. I'm amazed when I look back maybe a year or two ago in terms of the notes, and that, that LinkedIn algorithm would be definitely one example. If we double click a little bit even into the LinkedIn and the production of that video, what we also find is typically users there are on mobile devices, so having embedded captions that are part of the what's called an SRT file that's embedded into the video is helpful. So that your users, if they're mobile and they don't have a speaker, they can actually scroll through and listen or watch the text and not necessarily listen. So we've definitely learned that. I think the other thing that we've learned over time is a big challenge that B2B companies have right now is they've bought all these technologies. And I was looking at a Morgan Stanley report recently that polled CMOs of B2B companies. About 35% complained that the biggest issue was synthesizing all these different data sets. So here we're talking about LinkedIn, which is an island of information. You've got email, that's an island of information. You've got web and kind of that retargeting, which is an island of information. Bringing all those islands together in one reporting interface is a real big challenge that I don't want to say we've learned or we've mastered. I think it's a continuous improvement, but definitely a lesson that I've learned over the last year is you're trying to bring technologies together that can work with one another, as opposed to buying all these disparate sets of technologies that don't communicate, because then you can't get the reporting, you can't improve on what you really want to do from a marketing viewpoint. So that's probably been another big lesson learned, in addition to the LinkedIn video that we spoke of. And it's very easy for a chief marketing officer, and I was one of them at the time, where it's easy to point the finger at the vendor and say, hey, the vendor's all screwed up, when in reality, many times it can be the user not really understanding the capabilities and making what may have been a bad decision on bringing those integration together. So you got to be super thoughtful and doing a lot of checking and a lot of referencing to figure out how to synthesize all those pieces together, and that's what we specialize in as well. For B2B growth, I think without question, what we're doing here with video is definitely the trend. I think it represents a new opportunity for B2B brands to be more personable, to really get their message out, to share what their people do, and give their customers more texture to their business. We certainly see a rise of that, even in prospecting now, where people are sending out personalized video. I would say the personalized video on prospecting was probably a very strong trend at the beginning of 2018. It's probably become a little bit challenging here going into 2019 because it is hard to scale. But companies making videos, I think, are definitely the way to go, particularly with YouTube and kind of the search algorithms now. What we're seeing is a lot of people spending time online trying to do some searches. So I definitely think that's one major trend. Another major trend that we're seeing is peer reviews or user group information. So companies like G2 Crowd or Trust Radius, where users are giving their feedback on software. And in some cases, while they don't directly sell that user data, they're selling the metadata or the intent data behind the reviews. And so companies that get reviewed actually could get value from getting exposure to that G2. Basically, it's just, again, more online activity than ever before. So whether it's the videos that we talked about at first or these peer reviews that you can get that information online, the trend is everything is merging online. So the more information you can either put out there or get out and target, the more effective growth can be for companies going into 2019 and beyond. One major trend that we're also seeing is a lot of companies are now starting to do this on the B2B side, this hybrid. They've grown up on the lead generation model or demand generation model. And that's kind of like the 80s or 90s version, but it's not going away. It's still staying in place. Companies now are starting to put an oar in the water on this thing called account-based approach. So whether you're a sales or marketer, there's a bunch of different names that it's being called: account-based marketing, account-based everything. All it means is, instead of going from a person-centric view, companies now have the intelligence to go after an account and really look at account engagement, like what's happening within the account overall, as opposed to any one person. And why this is advantageous is what we're seeing with companies, particularly our clients, they're focusing more and more on a very limited number of accounts. And just like anything in life, when you focus, you get great results. We're seeing clients that are saying 40 to 60% uplift in the target accounts that they go after by focusing their account-based sales and marketing approach and unifying that and going after these target markets. Still, a lot of companies are experimenting with it. I don't think any one company has solved for it. A lot of people, I go to all the conferences, a lot of people are very proud as they present. But the vibe that I get right now is a lot of people, it's kind of work in progress. But definitely a trend that we've seen is companies are starting to do this hybrid, demand gen, lead gen, and account-based marketing, and trying to figure it out as they go along. In an environment where trust is lacking across the board, it is super challenging to get that trust and establish that relationship very, very quickly. So making sure that you're watching what's happening on the peer reviews becomes increasingly more important. One of the things that we like to say is we're a veteran-owned business. I'm a former veteran. Doesn't mean I'm any better or different from other companies, but one of the things that we do is we say we deliver on our promise. But it all goes against that trust. In an environment that we're all facing right now, quite frankly, on a macro and global level of a lack of trust, the transparency becomes super important in a buying process, that's for sure. One thing that I think we do is particularly well is we probably go above and beyond in terms of over-delivering to our clients, because we want to make sure we've all been operators before and we've all been burnt on the other side by agencies. And so one of the challenges that I found in starting this business was I wanted to remove that element altogether and really be on the side as a trusted advisor, earn the right to be a trusted advisor, my people and myself. And once we get in that role, we can really strategically help the company, whether it's myself or I've got extremely talented people that can kind of execute on a number of different fronts. So I think you're right. I hadn't really thought about it, but you're right. It probably does lend itself to some of that structure. I guess the only other thing too on that is being a veteran-owned business or starting my career in the service, I was used to taking a situation that had not a lot of structure and bringing structure to it, almost bringing order to chaos. And that being a startup business, as you know, you own your own business here, you almost have to have that mantra and that discipline of taking something that's very, very chaotic and putting some structure and order around it to get it to grow. So I think that's where we really accelerate or what we do best.